Hello? I'm Aaron, and my story began when I was only 4. On a night when my mom made me pack a bag and put me in the car. They strapped me into a car seat with my teddy bear on my lap and my backpack by my feet. Mommy, what are we doing?
Shut up.
Daddy, what's wrong? Stop talking, Aaron. I felt so confused and scared, and I didn't understand what was going on. But I did know that my parents didn't like me much. However, my twin sister was perfect, pretty, and smart in their eyes. I knew they liked her more. I couldn't help but resent her and them for it. We drove for hours, and I grew more and more scared. Eventually, I started to cry.
Shut up.
But I couldn't stop. I cried right up until we stopped, and I was picked up out of the car seat and left standing on the sidewalk outside of a vaguely familiar house. Mommy, what are we doing here? We? Nothing. But you? You're moving in. You'll never amount to anything, Aaron. We can't waste our time with you when your sister is the one who will make us money. And they climbed back into the car, laughing at me while I stood on the sidewalk crying. They drove away, and I didn't know what to do. I was tired, so I dragged my bag up to the house and curled into the porch swing and held my teddy tight. When I woke up, my aunt was crouched down beside me, and she had a hand on my shoulder.
Aaron, darling, are you okay?
No. Mommy and Daddy left me here.
I'm sorry, Aaron. They called me this morning and told me that they didn't want 2 children, only 1. And they said that your sister was a good business investment. But don't worry, I'll look after you. Come inside. Let's get you a nice hot bath and something to eat.
My aunt carried me inside, and that was the start of my new life. My aunt wasn't a wealthy woman, but she made enough for us. I went to school and studied hard, and I never forgot the feeling of being left behind. I never reached out to my parents, but I always figured that they would attempt to reconnect one day. But I wasn't going to hold my breath. Instead, I let my aunt become my entire family. She was my mom and my best friend. During the holidays, we would spend it with her friends and their children. I never wallowed in the pain of what my parents did. I went to counseling and wrote music to express myself. I wrote books and poems. I made myself a creative conduit for all the emotions I've ever had. I was a creator. One day, when I was 15, I was playing in a local bar for tips and free meals. The boss knew my aunt, and on the nights that she had late shifts, they invited me to play and gave me an empty booth at the back in which to eat and study. I had just finished my set to a rousing applause when someone I found vaguely familiar approached me. She was my age and had blonde hair and blue eyes, just like me.
Hi?
Hello?
I know who you are. Do you know who I am?
I have my suspicions.
I'm your twin sister.
I had assumed this would happen one day, but I expected my parents to be there too. Is it weird that I don't even remember your name?
Yes, it is. Didn't Auntie tell you about me?
She told me she hasn't seen you since they abandoned me.
Abandon is so dramatic.
And accurate. They left me in the street. They didn't even call my aunt until the next morning. They laughed while I stood on the sidewalk and cried.
So you remember a random night when you were 4 and not my name?
I remember the things that matter.
Then you better start remembering me. I've won so many medals and trophies in gymnastics that I'm basically famous. They're talking about sending me to the Olympics.
I couldn't understand what she wanted. Was she really here just to brag? What do you want?
I was just coming to see whether they made the right choice.
Well, consider me flattered that you found me enough of a threat that you had to come all the way down to see me in person. You can leave now.
I'm not here to flatter you. I just couldn't find you on the internet. Must be because you're such a nobody.
Not quite. I just changed my last name. She obviously hadn't considered this at all, and she started to scowl at me.
You know, there aren't any baby photos in the house because of you.
Sorry?
You should be. They basically started anew after they got rid of you, which means all my friends think I'm adopted because I can't show them baby photos because you were in all of them.
What do you want from me? I've done nothing wrong, and you're here to rub my nose in the fact that they kept you? If I had my way, I'd never hear from any of you again. Now please leave. If you don't, I'll have the bouncer show you out.
No, you wouldn't.
I stood up and waved my hand at the bouncer, Tommy. He was a big guy who I became friends with after he was assigned to watch over me the first few nights I was at the bar. He nodded and started walking towards me. Immediately, my sister's eyes went wide and she backed away.
Oh my God, fine. But just so you know, I'm glad my parents kicked you to the curb.
Feelings mutual. I'm blessed that I didn't have to grow up around someone so conceited and horrible. It felt like a fever dream the moment she left the bar. Tommy asked if I was okay, and I told him I was fine, but I was confused and a little hurt too. Why would she go so far out of her way to make me feel bad? When I got home that night, my aunt was still at work, and so I went to the couch and laid down. I tried watching some random videos on the internet, but although I wanted to drown out my thoughts, nothing seemed to work. Sometime in the early morning, my aunt woke me up.
Aaron, you shouldn't sleep on the sofa. It's not good for you, and you're too big for me to carry you upstairs.
Sorry.
Hey, what's wrong?
My twin came to the bar last night. I quickly explained what had happened, and my aunt grew angrier as I told her what happened.
My sister is the worst. She was always like that when we were younger. I'm better than you, so you're worthless. Mom loves me more because I got a better score on our science test. She harped on about it for ages. It really messed with me when I was younger.
That's why she left me with you? Because she thinks we're both worthless?
No matter what your mother believed, you are never worthless. It doesn't matter what you do, you're still worth something, and everyone is worthy of love.
My aunt was the best at making me feel better. So even with the stark reminder that one family had abandoned me, I still had a different one that never would. Oddly enough, it was the trauma from my past that I started to make a name for myself. I think it was partially because of how she bullied me about not being on the internet much, but I really wanted to prove her, and by extension my family, wrong. And so I uploaded some of my music to the internet. I put it on a niche site where people shared their music and stories with each other, but one of my songs was uploaded to a popular music sharing website, and it became a viral hit overnight. I woke up on a random Thursday to a million messages on my phone, and my aunt excitedly calling me downstairs. By this time, I was 20 and gangly. I had a mess of blonde hair and preferred to wear my high school basketball uniform on days when I didn't have to go to college. It was like this, fresh out of bed and confused as hell, that I met the CEO of the biggest record company in the country. Aaron, is it? Thank you for coming down to meet me. I'm the CEO of Rich Records, and this morning, my daughter came to me and begged me to listen to the new, biggest song in the world. At first, I was worried that our competition had started making waves, but I realized soon enough that you were unrepresented. So, I'm here to offer you representation. Do you have more songs? I stood there for a while with my mouth hanging open like an idiot.
Aaron has an entire library of music he's written. He's really very creative, always writing something. Books, poetry, music.
Seems you've got a lot of talent going on. We could use someone of your ability. It was too much too fast. I was overwhelmed. I had expected this to be a lazy day where I played video games with my friends and studied. I had not planned on being internationally famous on a fluke, but I had to take the bull by the horns. It would be an honor to work with your company, sir. That same day, the CEO took me and my aunt shopping to buy new clothes for a big meeting with his employees. Then, he flew us to the capital city in his private jet, where I met with his creative advisors, and we discussed the breadth of what I had to offer. By the end of the day, I had a record deal and had several tour dates booked. The single was released a week later, and it was the fastest-selling single in the whole history of the company. In no time at all, I was one of the richest musicians in the world, and my name was everywhere. Things were moving so quickly, and before I knew it, I was juggling school and performing at concert venues to massive crowds of adoring fans. I couldn't believe my good fortune. To show my appreciation to my aunt for all that she had done for me, I paid off her mortgage and gave her enough money so that she could retire and travel with me when I went on tour. I also put her in charge of managing my finances, as I knew that she was far more responsible with money than I was. While on tour, I happened to walk by a TV that was broadcasting sports news, and I heard my sister's name, which drew my attention. Apparently, there was a scandal involving her and a few of her teammates. All of them had been taking performance-enhancing drugs, and they had been caught. It didn't sound like they would face any legal repercussions. But she had been denied the ability to go to the Olympics, and her career as a gymnast was over. I couldn't help but chuckle when I heard that. She had been so proud of going to the Olympics, and now she had been caught cheating and would be lucky if she could get a job as a cleaning lady. Several months later, after my tour was finished, my aunt and I went home to relax for a bit before my next tour. As we approached my aunt's house, there sitting on the front porch were my parents and my twin sister. All three of them looked dirty and dressed in torn clothing. At first I wasn't sure it was them and thought that three homeless people had wandered onto my aunt's porch. But as we got closer, I realized who they were.
There you are. We've been waiting for days for you to come home.
For what? Why are you here?
Well, there was a bit of a misunderstanding and we're going through a bit of a rough patch. Just let us inside and we'll tell you how you can help. Excuse me, but we aren't inviting you monsters into our home. After what you did to Aaron all those years ago, you have some nerve. You're just lucky that we don't call the police and have you charged with trespassing.
How can you be so heartless? After I was caught with the steroids that Mom and Dad gave me, we lost everything. We couldn't pay our bills and ended up losing our house.
In other words, you were living outside of your means and the debt caught up to you then? Well, that really isn't our problem. You kicked us both out of the family years ago, and you don't have any right to come demanding for us to help you now that you're flat broke. I pulled out my cell phone and called the police, and they arrived a few minutes later. Thankfully, my parents and sister were distracted by talking to my aunt, and so they didn't notice until the police pulled up, and by then, it was too late. And they were loaded up into the squad cars and taken away. We later heard that when they were taken to the police station and were processed, that they found steroids on all three of them, and they were then arrested. It was quite the surprise, especially when they were put on trial, and between the Olympics scandal and being arrested with steroids on them. The judges in their cases weren't very lenient on them, and gave them each 10 years in prison. It felt rather fitting that we got to see karma in action, actually. My parents had abandoned me because they were convinced that my sister was the one that would make something out of herself. And yet I had been the one to strike it rich and famous. Although, I guess she did become famous as well, but for all the wrong reasons. There are times, though, that I wondered that if they hadn't abandoned me, if things would still have turned out the way that they did, and I honestly don't think that they would have. After all, my aunt had been the one to really make me believe in myself, and without her influence, I don't think I would be half the artist that I am today. So even though my parents hurt me more than anyone else on this planet ever could, they helped to ensure my future success by giving me to the one person that would love me more than anyone else in the world. Of course, when they do get out of prison, they'll be dirt poor and will probably come begging for money, and I'll just have to hire plenty of bodyguards to keep them away. Even though I have them to thank for putting me where I needed to be in order to become successful, I still have no desire or need for toxic people like them in my life. Thanks for watching.